It is now 7 p.m. on Thursday, December 19th, 2019. I call this meeting of the Bellevue Planning Commission to order. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What's that? No.
Roll call.
Mr. Casey,
Here.
Mr. Perrin,
Here.
Ms. Kane,
Here.
Mr. Arney,
Present.
Mr. Ritz,
Here.
Mr. Ackley,
Here.
Mr. Hankins,
Here.
Ms. Cutsforth,
Present.
Mr. Jacobson.
Here.
This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, a copy of which can be found in the back vestibule of the hearing room. This time, I would ask that all commissioners and all audience members to please silence or turn off cell phones or any other electronic device that could disrupt our proceedings. Thank you. This time, I'd entertain a motion to revise or approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes of the November 21st, 2019 regular meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the November 21st regular meeting.
Second. It was a motion by Casey, second by Jacobson.
You have abstain as a choice.
Okay.
Eight voted yes. Mr. Ackley abstained. Motion carried.
At this time, I'd accept into record all staff reports, attachments, memos, handouts regarding each application. Staff, any updates or additions?
No updates.
At this time, I'd entertain a motion to accept into record all staff reports, attachments, memos, and handouts.
I'll make a motion to accept into the record all staff reports, attachments, memos, and handouts. Second.
Motion by Cutsford, second by Kane.
All voted yes. Motion carried.
We do not have anything on the consent agenda tonight, so I'm going to move forward to the public hearings. We have 2 items for public hearing tonight. I ask that everyone limit their testimony to 3 minutes. I reserve the right to curtail any testimony that's going long. At the end of the day, please use the golden rule, treat others as you wish to be treated yourself. If you would like to speak for or against any item after I've read it, please come up to the podium, sign, and state your name for the record, and then put whatever you need to on the record. Our first item tonight is item 3A, request to rezone lots 1 and 2, Whispering Timber Estates replat 6, being a replat of lots 103A, 103B, 124A, the west 22 feet of lot 127 and lot 128, Whispering Timber Estates, lots 6, part of lot B, 8A, 2A, part of lot 9, except the south 155 feet, and part of lot 10B1, except the south 30 feet. Fair Hill addition from AG, RE, and RS 84 to RE and RS 84 for the purpose of single-family residential and small subdivision plat lots 1 and 2, Whispering Timber Estates replat 6. Applicants Nick Brim and Megan Crane. Location 1606 Camp Gifford Road. Case number Z-1911-07 and S-1911-10. Is the applicant present? Yes. Would you like to come up to the podium and
Hi, I am Nick Brim of 1508 Camp Gifford Road. I am looking to seek the portion of lot 2 behind my current lot. There is a current shed on that lot that was part of my house purchase that I'm looking to seek the land underneath of it. And then lot 1 is Todd Santoro of 1606 Camp Gifford. And in order to maintain codes, we had to join his lot with his lot to maintain access and egress to his lot.
Todd Santoro, 1606 Camp Gifford.
all right, will you both sign there? And then can you say your name a little bit closer to the mic to make sure it got it?
Sure. Todd Santoro, 1606 Camp Gifford.
Thank you. All right. If you'd like to be seated after we do the public testimony, I have a chance to maybe call you back up to answer any questions that come up. At this time, I will open it to public testimony for anyone that would like to speak for or against this motion as read.
Hi, my name is Rodney Eaton. I own lot 114 in Whispering Timbers Estate. And I'm against this proposal. I understand there's some property issue conflicts. And what I don't understand is why can't we rezone for just that conflict area and not have all of us in the neighborhood give up our wilderness area that I, for one, bought my house because of that. It's my retirement home. I wanted to be out in the country. Yes, I'm in the city of Bellevue, but I had all this land behind me that I was told was owned by the city. I asked if I could buy part of that land so I could make sure I keep that nature behind me. I was told no. I don't know how this happened, that the land is now sold. None of us, well, I'll speak for myself. I was not informed that this land was even for sale now. I don't want to lose that serenity that we've got now. It's my retirement home. If all else fails, I can go out on my back porch. I can sit there. I've got all the woods behind me. I can watch the deer, the turkey, the fox. That's the whole reason I bought this house. And now it's in jeopardy. And I know maybe it's not the plan right now to build houses or apartments, but once it's zoned residential, what's that going to keep from being down the road sold to a developer? And then it's sectioned out. And now I have houses behind me instead of looking out on a beautiful wilderness area. I mean, it's called Whispering Timbers, you know, not wind whistling through houses. And that area is nice and quiet. We have no crime. I just like to keep the area as it is now. Thank you.
My name is Charles Ryer. I live in Whispering Timbers as well at 809 Moore Drive, which is block 59, I think. And I would express the same concerns he has. I bought the house 25 years ago, and it's a natural corridor for deer and other wildlife coming from Fontanelle Hills or Fontanelle Forest. And I just can't imagine being there with houses behind me. Number one, I think it's too hilly that they could be there, but it would be a real zoo to try and put houses back there. But like I say, 25 years, and I spend my whole time looking at the deer and the birds. I'm a bird watcher, and that's my main concern. And my main concern is not to see people and houses behind me. So thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Dave Kokol, K-O-U-K-O-L. I live at 1313 Camp Gifford Road, which is in the Whispering Timbers subdivision. The materials I got were almost impossible to read and discern where it is that they're dealing with. And so I appreciate the pictures here, but I would like the applicant or the Planning Commission to explain to me on what's on the video screens exactly what areas the two landowners own, and then what areas are going to be affected by this, so I can get some more information. Can anybody do that for me?
Yes, I can do that. Mr. Brim, the applicant, owns this home right here. When he purchased the home, this shed was part of what he purchased. However, that shed, as you can see, doesn't sit on his property. It sits on Mr. Santoro's property. So, Mr. Santoro has agreed to sell Mr. Brim enough property for his storage shed so it could be contained on his lot with his residence. In order to facilitate that, this area is made up of a number of different lots currently. All these different lots here, where my mouse is, are owned by Mr. Santoro. Some of them, yes, were previously owned by the city, but they are currently privately owned by Mr. Santoro. And I will show you the different zonings that they have. So in order to facilitate the platting and moving that property line, we need to have consistent zoning, and we need to make lots that will conform to our current regulations. All of these portions of lots here are agriculturally zoned currently, but they're non-conforming ag lots. Several of them are also landlocked. So what Mr. Santoro and Mr. Brim are doing is, out of all those multiple lots, they're creating two lots. So Mr. Santoro currently owns a home right here. So he will combine all of the land that he owns with the house, with the lot that his house currently sits on right here, and make that one lot with a residential estate zoning. That proposed zoning will not allow him to do anything different than what he's already doing right now on the lot. It allows for one principal structure, one single-family residence, which he already has. So he will not be able to build houses on the rest of the property. This platting and this zoning would prevent him from doing that. And then Mr. Brim's lot would be zoned RS84, which is what the houses adjacent to him are also currently zoned. So he would be in the same boat. Two lots will be created. There's already two existing single-family residences, so no additional homes would be able to be constructed under this proposed platting and zoning.
How did Mr. Santoro come to acquire the lots from the city?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to that. I work in the planning department, and I don't have any involvement as far as what property is, deemed to be able to be sold. That all goes through the city administration and the public works department.
So we would have to follow up with them to get answers to that question.
Correct.
Okay.
All I can tell you is that it has been privately owned by Mr. Santoro. It's currently privately owned. None of the property that is within this plat is city owned at this time. It's all owned by either Mr. Santoro or Mr. Brim.
But it was at one time city owned.
Portions of it were, yes, correct.
Okay. And when it was city owned, there could be no residential real estate development of that, correct?
Correct, because some of those lots were landlocked and they were zoned ag, but primarily because the city's not in the business of being a developer and doing single-family residential development, so that was not in the plans.
What assurances can the Planning Commission provide to us neighbors that there will be no development on that lot, on the property in question?
Because the current regulations for each of those zoning districts allow for one principal structure.
And that's the shed right now?
They already have 2 homes that exist, and there'll be 2 lots when all this is said and done. So our current zoning ordinance, our regulations that were adopted in 2011 don't allow any further development of that property. It wouldn't allow for, say, a duplex or homes to be built on the other portions of that property.
With that zoning.
With that zoning, correct.
What would prevent either of these 2 applicants from selling off a portion of the land that's being changed?
They would have to come back and do another replat and a rezoning. And if they were to do that, that would go through the same public hearing process and the same notification process, where we would do a legal ad, we would notify property owners within 300 feet, and we would also post a sign on the property. Part of the issue here, though, is access. These lots would be difficult to develop no matter what, just because for the majority of them, they're landlocked. So a majority of the property is landlocked. It wouldn't have access.
Okay. What action, if you can tell me, was taken with respect to the acquisition by Mr. Santoro, if you know? Was there a public hearing with respect to that acquisition, or was it simply through the planning or through the...
That I couldn't tell you because, again, I'm not involved in that process. I don't know that. I don't believe any public hearing is probably required with a transaction like that, but I wasn't part of that process, and I'm not familiar with it, so...
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Let's finish the public hearing, and we'll see if anybody else has any questions, and then at that time, Mr. Santoro, you can come up and address all the questions.
Is there anyone else present that would like to speak for or against? Have any additional questions they'd like on the record? All right. Applicant, if you'd like to come back up and... Oh, before that, we're going to close the public hearing and then ask the applicant to maybe address all those questions. All right. It's time I'm closing the public hearing.
Again, Todd Santoro, and I'm going to try and look at the same time and speak at the microphone. So we bought the property last February.
Can you try to be closer to the microphone?
Sorry.
I know that it's...
I'll do it this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
We bought the property last February because we were, not to be nasty, but disappointed how the city was taking care of it. There's a lot of trash out there. There were kids drinking down by the, we call it the ravine. And we've been lucky enough to do all right in life, and we could purchase this and, in our view, help the neighborhood. Since this is on the record as a verbal contract, none of the properties that we have discussed will ever be resold for development, touched, anything but what they are now. Generally, if you see me in those woods, I'm with a camera and I'm looking to take pictures of owls. That's my life. well, that's probably a stretch. But all of this was bought purely to make it better. We are in the process of, right where your mouse is, if you move that about an inch right there, we are looking at turning that into a natural prairie next year and restoring it, doing some other things, just trying to make it a better place. But there will be no building on there ever, period. The purpose of today is simply so, one, Nick can take this little slice and be a good neighbor and make life easy. Two, we own commercial property in Omaha, we own residential property in Bellevue, we own property in Massachusetts. We get a lot of tax statements, we get a lot of paperwork. Having one lot versus the envelope that I got from the city the other day would make life a little bit easier. I don't care, other than I'd fight you tooth and nail if you tried to zone it commercial or something stupid like that. What we zone it, just as long as we have our woods. And Nick doesn't have somebody, I get hit by a truck tomorrow saying, well, that you don't own where your shed is. So.
All right. Did you want to add anything, Nick?
I would not. I think Todd spoke very clearly of what our intentions are. Neither of us plan to develop or any structures on either of these lots.
And if anybody would like to talk about this afterwards, I'm more than happy to sit tight outside.
All right. I'm going to turn this over to commissioners. If you guys want to take a seat, if the commissioners have any questions, we'll bring you up. But commissioners, your wishes? Yep.
Maybe a couple of questions for staff. So I'm curious why we didn't include lot 2A1, which is north of this. If his goal was to get less tax statements and information from county assessors and taxing stuff, is there a reason why we didn't include that lot with this?
We didn't discuss that lot. You know, it was never part of the equation. It does have
There's a little chunk above there, I know. Yeah.
right. It does have access off of a street. We didn't look at that. We can ask Mr. Santoro why he didn't want to include it, but we looked at the remainder of the lots.
Okay. Second question would be, if their concern is development on this, I mean, obviously an ag zoning is less likely to have development than an RE. Could he have a single family house on an ag if you rezone the whole thing ag?
He could. Even though they're legal non-conforming lots, it would still allow for a house to be constructed. It would still allow for large outbuildings to be constructed, so that could be done under ag zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Is anybody wish to make a motion?
Well, if there are no other questions by the other commissioners, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request to rezone lots 1 and 2 Whispering Timbers Estate, replat 6. That is item 3A on our agenda, to spare myself from reading the rest of it. Motion to make a motion to approve based on conformance with the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, as well as the perceived negative impact upon the surrounding areas.
Second that.
All right. Motion by Jacobson, second by Hankins.
All voted yes, motion carried.
All right. This item will go for public hearing in front of the City Council on February 4th. Continuing on to item 3B. Request to rezone Lot 2, Twin Valley Church, replat 1 addition from RG28 to RG28PS for the purpose of multifamily residential development with site plan approval. Applicant Encompass Design, Inc., general location Fort Crook Road and Chernobyl Drive, case number Z-1906-05. Is the applicant present?
I'm excuse me, Kyle Hazy with ENA Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, Omaha. Along with myself, Rusty Snow with Summit Housing, who is the developer, is also in the audience tonight. The piece of property that we are discussing tonight is, are we able to pull up what I have on the screen, or on the computer?
Can you pull it up, Stacy, from the lectern? Okay.
As you can see what Tammy has up on the screen now. That piece of property is 11.8 acres. The site is on the corner of Grenoble and Fort Crook Road. It is currently zoned RG 28 and is vacant. Oh, it's currently, here's a photo of the site as it is today. As mentioned, it's on the corner of Grenoble and Fort Crook Road, just to the south of that. It is currently zoned RG 28, as seen here. To the north of the property is BGH zoning and includes self-storage. To the east is RG 28-PS. It is duplex residential. To the south is ag land, and then to the west it's Highway 75 right away. We are currently requesting a rezone from RG 28 to RG 28-PS. The reason is RG 28 only allows one building per lot. So as the zoning stands right now, the developer could build a 3-story building with 180 units at 15.3 DU per acre. But their desire is to build 8 buildings, which are 2-story, which would fit the neighborhood more cohesively, with 75 units and a clubhouse at roughly 6.3 DUs per acre. The RG 28-PS zoning also matches the zoning to the east and is consistent with the City of Bellevue's future land use map, which calls for this area out as future multifamily. We had a neighborhood meeting on the site back in July 22nd at Life Spring Church. We met with approximately about 30 of the neighbors showed up there. And then we also heard from the neighbors at the July 25th public hearing here at Planning Commission. During that time, the 4 main concerns or questions that we heard is what the building's going to look like. They were concerned there's some existing trees on the east property line, as my mouse is where my mouse is. They're concerned for that. There's also some concern about interior traffic within the site, with safety for the residents. Our previous design had kind of a two-road layout with the clubhouse in the middle. And then also, of course, the neighborhood concern of limited access within this neighborhood with the one access point. At that time, on July 25th, we laid over the project to try and address those comments as much as we could. With that, to answer the first question that I brought up is what do some of the homes look like that are going to be built, and what's this project going to look like? This is an example of the clubhouse for the site. This is a building that they have used previously on some of their other locations. This is an example of the two-story building as well, similar to the same materials, shape, and mass that those buildings will have. And then here is an interior photo of what their finished product looks like within those units that they are wanting to build. Going back to the site plan, as mentioned, we previously had two roads, two separate parking lots going down the middle of this site plan. We reduced that down to one, and in doing so, we were able to pull these buildings back from the east property line. That created more of a buffer between the buildings and the existing residential to the east. That also allowed us to reduce our grading along that east property line, and gave us the opportunity to save more of those trees and protect some of that buffer that those residents were concerned about. And along with the changes to the building locations, we do have the clubhouse in the middle along with the play area for the kids to use within the project. And then on the west side of the development, you can see these rectangle areas. Those are private gardens for the residents of the project. Well, they'll be able to grow their own vegetables and flowers as they choose. To address the access points, with only one access point into the neighborhood, one of the reasons that we laid over, and the thought was that as being a developer, a new developer in the area, the current neighbors had tried to reach out to the county and state previously to address the one access issue, that their access points on 75 had been taken away. We thought we might be able maybe a little more leverage or a little bit more a different point of view to get some response from them. So we met and had multiple phone calls with the county and the state about the single access points to the neighborhood as a whole. This was an attempt that maybe, as we mentioned, that might be able to have better luck than the neighbors were having. The state response was that since Highway 75 had been reclassified, I'll pull this up. The Highway 75 had been reclassified, I think, as an expressway. For safety and design standards, they were no longer able to have direct access to Highway 75. It would have to come off of a off-ramp situation where cars had an opportunity to gain some speed to flow with the traffic. And they had also built the Fort Crook Road access road expansion up to Fairview Road as part of their plan for getting rid of the two access points that they had off of Highway 75. The Sarpy County, their response is that they had no immediate plans for the area and didn't have a whole lot more information to offer us at that point. I do understand that the city is currently trying to find some development to go in this corner, and as they do, if that occurs, to have that new development, they would like to see include the access from Normandy down to 34 to provide that secondary access point for the neighbors and for this new development. With that, I'll let Rusty Snow follow up on a brief background on Summit Housing.
Rusty Snow, Summit Housing Group. I want to thank the Planning Commission for giving us the opportunity to represent this project. I wanted to give a little brief about Summit Housing Group. I know there was some questions at our neighborhood meeting about us and what we do, and we are a Missoula, Montana-based development company. We do apartment development only, and most, if not all, of our developments are built with some sort of federal use of funds, whether it's a tax credit or some other type of housing program that the federal government utilizes. We do this in 6 different states and have been doing it since 2002. We've got 35 developments that would be similar or like this across those 5 states. This would be the 6th state that we've developed in. So we have quite a bit of development experience as it relates to these types of specific financing vehicles, and going through these types of processes at a local level too. We also have our own management company. We have our own construction company. We will not be utilizing either of those for this project. NP Dodge is the management company that we've chosen to help us maintain ongoing once the potential project is built, and we don't have a contractor in place yet, but we've talked to several local contractors that have quite a bit of interest in something if we move forward with the project. So we just felt like this particular project was a little bit too far reaching for us, being from Montana, even though we're, we have 200-300 units in Cheyenne, which would be our closest. That's still on the other side of Nebraska, from where we are here. So we just felt it'd be better to bring a local group here, both on the construction side of things and the management side of things. As Kyle mentioned, there's 75 units in this project. There's 3 different tiers of, or actually 4 different tiers of income mix, one being market, one being 40% of the area median income, the other being 50% of the area median income, and the last is 60% of the area median income. And that ranges on our 3 and 4 bedroom units, which are basically split half, 37 and 38, to get the 75 units with 1 manager unit, 3 bedroom unit. But those unit range, or that unit mix in the rental range, goes from about 725 to about 1,300, and 1,300 being the market rate units that are the highest rate. So, and again, we're talking about 3 and 4 bedroom units only. So, that 725 is, it's a very low 40% unit. We do expect this project to attract, families, being at 3 and 4 bedrooms, which is why we've got our, kind of community gardens and playgrounds and outdoor areas, and tons of green space, as part of this, which is Kyle mentioned is certainly one of the main reasons we kind of are coming back for this rezone, is to make this feel and look much more like a community than what the current zoning allows for, which would be one large building with almost double the number of units, at least by density calculations. And lastly, just kind of, as it relates to the site, with the Air Force Base and with all of the kind of local amenities around, we just feel like this is just a great place for community. All the neighbors in the neighborhood who have, come out to support or even, comment on this have, at least from my perspective, been great and supportive of the project. And we just feel like it's a good fit, for what we're trying to do with our tax credits. So, thank you very much.
You all probably remember me. My name is Dennis Ryan. I'm chairman of SID 67. I live at 841 Bordeaux Avenue. And we're all in favor of the apartments as long as we can get a second entrance going south out of Euro to 34. We are been in process with the state and county and that, and I believe with Bellevue attorneys. We did file an appeal, which was filed here about 2 weeks ago, I think it was. Excuse me. Anyway, the way that one road is, for them to build those apartments there, you're going to have semis with materials coming in there. You're going to have school buses coming in there and going out. You've got all of Offutt Air Force Base personnel that lives in there in our subdivision. They use that in the morning and in the evening. So it's going to be a real congested area, and the safety is what a lot of the homeowners have stressed, that they're just really concerned as a safety factor that we're going to be, if there's an accident, they put in some, what do you call it? Can't think of the name of it now. Old age. Shoulders on both sides of that stretch of road there. And if they could get that other entrance coming south from Ural out to 34, it's 2,700 feet. And that don't sound like a whole lot, but they're saying that it's going to cost around $3 million. So, you know, we would be willing to put out some bonds if we have to help pay for it. But it's all up to you guys just to do the right thing and help us out. Like I say, we really have no objection to the apartments. We've seen the designs that they've showed, and they've got a good reputation. And the biggest problem is we don't have any way to go south, and you're going to have you got 4 different SIDs in there. You've got the Cedarview SID, you got the Normandy Hill SID, you got Frenchman's Village, which is the duplexes, and then you got the Normandy Hill apartment complex. So then once we get the apartments in there too, that's 5 subdivisions in there. The road could come right through the field there and not take up very much land, and right out onto 34. They've already got a abutment cut out for future access into that area. It exits right out on 34. And the way that, if you move that map up a little higher, okay, there's 34. Just to the, it'll be your right, my left. Yeah, right in through there, where that little creek is right there. Yeah, that's a dry creek bed. It's not ever full of water or anything. But you come straight through there. It's only 2,700 feet, and there's the little abutment I was talking about. You come out there, and you're going right on to north on 75. If you wanted to go south, you just go right up and over on 34, and they've got an on-ramp going south. Coming home at night, if you're coming from the north and going south, you get off there at that Platteview exit there, and you can go right on in, come back over 75 and go right back on into the subdivision. And if you guys can do something with us, we'd be more than willing to work with everybody on it. We really would like to get that done. I know the neighbors, they keep asking me, you know, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, it's what I've been told so far. It's been put on hold until after the first of the year, I believe it is, February. Can't think of anything else I can tell you right now, except that I know that we've had a couple fire engines that had to come out for a couple emergencies. We had a lady that fell down, and she lives alone, and they had a hard time getting there. And that was the other big thing, because the south entrance, it's not open, it's gated off. It has a padlock and a gate on it, and that's right there, yeah. So that's about all I can add to it right now. If you've got any questions afterwards, I'll be glad to answer anything.
Can I ask you to sign in, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Jared Biltoff at 14918 Bordeaux Avenue. My colleagues may be for an apartment complex. I am not. State Fire Marshal Code, more than 500 people, needs 2 routes of entrance and egress. We have one with over 900 some people out there. You guys work for us. You're supposed to build our infrastructure. You haven't annexed us, so you don't own us yet. Is our road to Fort Crook, is that even an emergency snow route? We get a 3-foot snow. We have a significant elderly population. Someone has a massive coronary trying to scoop out their driveway. No one can get to us. Congratulations. We're the last on the list to ever get bailed out. The apartments, if you look at the rest of our neighborhood, if you zoom in on the map, the apartments do not fit with our neighborhood. We have no crime out there. It's very quiet. It's very quaint. We don't need the leader in Missoula, Montana, running Section 8 low-income housing, building out. Who knows what's going to happen? Are they going to run 75 units of Section 8 out there? We don't need that. We have limited support as it is. It does not fit in our neighborhood. We do not have the support. We should be closed for further development until at least that second road is created. We need to think. That road goes out, we're cut off. There's an accident, anything, we are separated. We have no entrance or exit to our community. It doesn't fit. It doesn't go with it. By the way, we have 0 representation up here. That's all right. Go ahead and annex us. I guarantee I'll be up there with one of you guys. Don't worry about that. But other than that, that's all I have to say.
Good evening, Matt Ramsey, 822 Bordeaux Avenue. And I am a member of the SID 67 board, although I'm not here in that capacity this evening. On your analysis, part 3, C, referring to traffic and access. The second line, it says the property will have access from 2 points, one along Grenoble Drive, another from Normandy Boulevard. While this is true, both Grenoble and Normandy connect to a single ingress-egress point of Fort Crook South. And as such, the site fails to meet the second exit standard of the International Fire Code, and no additional construction should be made in this area until a second egress location is established. Other than that, I really don't have any objection to this proposal. My only other caveat with this is I do see a point at some point in the future where Bellevue would like to develop all the way down to the Highway 34, following that Fort Crook Road South corridor as a parallel access road to Highway 75. And with those apartments in there, that's really, putting a collector road that's going to run through the middle of a residential area, which could be, could really stifle any further development south of this point. Again, it's not a big deal today, but I think the long-term vision is for Bellevue to, be able to grow down to at least Highway 34 and have a good through access to that point. And so that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak for or against on the record?
Hi, my name's Marilyn McLaughlin, and I just have one quick question.
Can you say your name again? I didn't hear it, sorry.
My name is Marilyn McLaughlin, and I just have one quick question. How many parking spots are going to be there for these people? That's a lot of apartments, and my concern is that they are going to be parking up on Normandy and running between the houses to get closer to wherever it is that they're living, and that there will not be enough parking spots within their own apartment complex.
I can answer that. The proposed site plan shows 152 surface parking stalls, which
So
is
that would be 2 per apartment?
correct, which is our minimum requirement. Yes, ma'am.
But if they have multiple cars, several cars per family, 4-bedroom, you could have 4 different cars per apartment. Where are those people gonna park at? I don't want them running between my home and their community. And there's no place to walk. I mean, if you have people that wanna walk down to the come and go or something, there's no sidewalks right along with no shoulders on the road, that they came out and added a little, but it's about this wide. You couldn't even pull over if you got a flat tire, you'd be in the grass. So, and it is poorly serviced. They've already been out there one time to make a major repair. And the congestion on Fairview and Fort Crook is horrible in the morning. And you cannot get across Fairview to get down on 75 if you're going south. It's very dangerous. It's just too much traffic. And the trees that are in the back, when we bought our place, we were told nobody owned that property. When did the church buy it? We've all maintenanced that back there. Why do they get to make this decision? I just think it's very unfair. And I think it's unfair, excuse me, I'm sorry, that somebody from out of state can come in and make a big decision like this that affects an entire housing community. They don't live it, we do. And will there be multiple families in an apartment, in one apartment? That happens frequently when you have rental properties.
We can address that question to the owner or to the applicant when they come back up at the end.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, my name is David Adoremi, 14914 Bordeaux Avenue. I'm one of the SID board member. I'm completely against this property development inside Bordeaux, Normandy Hills, on the basis of the fact that we don't have to entrance or exit into the subdivision. I've got young kids. I've seen a lot of traffic on that little road we have right now. It's not conducive. It's not safe enough. If the state or the property developer can give us a second entrance, I'm okay with it. But without that, I think they shouldn't be coming in there. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak with the public hearing still open? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Ask the applicant to come back up to the stand and address the questions that have come up, the concerns that were brought up.
Yes. Do we have a list of those concerns?
The most recent was the multiple families in one unit.
Yeah, so these are, again, they're, housing tax credit units. There's a extreme compliance portion of this program, which is, obviously a huge benefit. not only to the residents but to the neighbors around it. We have a 15-year hold on every project that we developed that utilizes these housing credits. There's an annual audit by NIFA, which is the state agency that administers the housing tax credits. So the short answer is no. There's a large financial impact to us if our files or if we are out of compliance. And having multiple families, meaning, instead of 4, 8 people in there would be a huge file finding and a financial impact on us as the owners.
All right. Question. You had a question about parking.
Yes, I mean, I think it's difficult for us to know exactly how people are going to react, but we are certainly parked to the required standard, and even if we weren't coming in for a rezone, it would still be the same parking standard that we'd be utilizing if it was one building or if it was 8. So I don't know. We are meeting that requirement. I will also say that having some percentage, 70, 80% of the project as affordable or workforce housing, the likelihood of having 3 and 4 cars per unit is relatively slim. Most of our projects, and this is definitely kind of in any state we do business in, we are usually have too many parking spaces on our development. But again, we're meeting that standard that's required.
And then can you just touch on the trees on I think it's the east side again?
Yes, I mean, I think we kind of talked a little bit about that, or Kyle did. I mean, we definitely moved the project down considerably to kind of move away and buffer that and mitigate the removal of those trees. Again, without full surveys and all of that stuff and approvals, I mean, it's difficult to say exactly how many, but the goal was to move completely away from those trees. I mean, it helps us from a grading standpoint too, because that hill back there is relatively steep, and so staying away from that is is a benefit to the overall development.
Take a seat
Kyle Hazy once again. Just as a point, this was discussed at the last meeting. I don't know if everyone knows the condition of the Normandy when it is where it butts up to 75. And this was touched on earlier, I think by Dennis with the gate. There is a gate down on that bottom portion and an access point. And I think one of the state's points when they had just the one access point is they do have from their point of view, they do have an emergency access point at that point where there is a gate there, but it is locked and should be a breakaway condition for the trucks as a point of emergency access. I know some of the neighbors had a point of view that maybe didn't, that gate is still hard to break away, but I just want to bring it up that's one of the points that the state made when we addressed that issue of the one access point to the neighborhood.
All right. Commissioners, thoughts, wishes?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, a quick comment and then a question for the applicant. So might as well come up to the podium if you would, please.
Sure.
This application started on my watch as chair in July.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to make the point both to the applicant, but in particularly the general public, for interacting in a good manner and good faith to try and incorporate the suggestions of the public, but also particularly the public in staying with this application for several meetings and deferrals and showing up tonight. sometimes when they get stretched out, it can try one's patience. So I'm appreciative of the public continuing to make input. The one note I wanted to make before I get to this, my question is that in doing my research on this lot, I noticed that this has been zoned RG28 back to the 70s. Is that correct, staff?
I assume it's the 70s. We can trace it back to 1985. In 1985, when replat was done, at that time it was RG28 and portions of it potentially BN, which is commercial. So we know that that current zoning dates back to 1985. I can't trace it beyond that, only because Normandy Hills was originally platted and approved in Sarpy County under their jurisdiction. And I haven't been able to track down an original file from them, but our files date back to 1985.
Great, thank you. So my question is, under the RG28 zoning, you could have built a 3-story, 118-unit apartment without having to come to the Planning Commission.
Correct.
But you've taken the opportunity, and public has been interested in making sure that we've got a development that is above and beyond just a single building, and hence we have the RG28 PS request in place. The particular question after all of that is, we've heard a number of comments about safety and traffic, of which you've made a good effort to try and interact with the state, as has the public as well. The green area that you're putting in the center of your development, what I'm leading up to on all this is big enough to support a life flight helicopter in emergency conditions. It's 50 or 75 feet. It's a street width. I mean, I'm not asking you to make a aviation judgment, by the way, but right now that area does not have any capability for emergency aerial support by any means, other than what you may be installing inadvertently just in the routine manner of construction.
I would say that's relatively fair, yes.
Okay. So in redoing your construction, one of the questions on construction, if I may continue, is all the amount of construction vehicles that are going to take place. But I noticed, given some experience in construction, you're actually building 8 buildings. You're under no impression you're going to build all 8 of them and put several hundred people on the job site at once with tens of semis showing up and dropping off equipment. Could you go into a little detail what your construction technique might be?
I mean, that's a very, very good question. So, I mean, again, without having a general contractor on board and talking to them, but us as a general contractor, even again, we're not going to do this project, but looking at the construction sequencing, I would put in the hard surface road first, so that we could reach easily with trucks and maneuver throughout each building. And you're exactly right. We would build, dig a hole, build a foundation, dig a hole, build a foundation, and then we might have a framer that would come, in sequence behind them, and then you would have, plumbers and electricians and all of that. But no, we would not be working with 6 different crews of electricians on 6 different buildings or 8 different buildings. There would be a sequence of that that went around. I mean, there would certainly be some period of time where you'd have people that were starting on the first building and people finishing on the last building, where the site would be its most impactful as it relates to people on site. There would certainly be some of that going on, but again, I think the ability to have that hard surface road in, even if we've got to reseal it and repave it, after the fact, it's going to be a huge, portion, because we can park there, we can stage everything on site. We're not going to be blocking the rest of the neighborhood with Connex containers full of materials. That'll all be self-contained.
Okay, thank you. And your construction techniques, of course, will all be done to acceptable standards in our zoning district.
Yes.
So that would include all the electrical, all the physical, and also all the fire protection. So in terms of having 2 entrances to your area, I believe the International Fire Protection Code, I guess the question for staff is, I'm not sure that we're under the International Fire Protection Code or the National Fire Protection Code.
Yes, you are.
But having said that, either way, is the entrance is to residential or to just access to commercial and residential buildings. not necessarily to a whole residential area. So you're in compliance with your development.
Correct. These units will be 100% sprinkled, monitored, all of the above.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question or a comment and then a question for staff, actually. There is a great need in this city and in this county for affordable and workforce housing, and that need was exacerbated by the spring floods. There was even a large story in the Bellevue Leader a few weeks ago about the families that have been displaced, and it's families that are in need of housing like this. Having said that, I do have significant concerns about access to this whole area. And I'm just wondering, is there anything else you can tell us about the pursuit of development that might speed up this secondary access to the property?
I cannot share anything public at this point. My office doesn't have any applications that would be public. I can tell you that our city administration, we are actively pursuing development in that area. The city most definitely wants to see a second access point to this neighborhood, and that will continue to be a priority as the city pursues development. What was previously discussed is exactly accurate. There is a stub out on Euro, and what the city would look at is, yes, an access point that would go down to the south and connect with Highway 34. I think, as Mr. Hazy pointed out, through the city's conversations with the developer and the state and the county, at this point in the game, there are no plans from either of those agencies to pursue anything or do anything at this time. So it will end up being on the city eventually to make this happen. And the city is well aware of that. And like I said, we'll continue to pursue development and pursue that connection to the south. Unfortunately, I can't tell you anything more publicly, and I can't give a timetable at this point.
Question for staff. I spent quite a bit of time actually down in the area looking at traffic. I spent several Saturdays down there, several evenings, and one bright and early morning watching the traffic. And it seems that there's a double risk contingency here. One is you have to have the road blocked, and then you have to have some sort of emergency to require passage. It looks to me that the bigger issue may very well be the traffic on Fairview. Is my personal, non-professional opinion, more so than the risk of the road blockage. Have staff heard anything about the intersection right at Fairview?
Currently, that is still county and state right-of-way. So I can tell you in our discussions with the county, that is an area that continues to be monitored. I think everyone is well aware of the traffic that is there during peak hours, with traffic going to Offutt and traffic coming from, the other established neighborhoods to the west. So that continues to be on everybody's radar. Again, there's no plan currently for a traffic light, but those are areas that the county and we will continue to monitor to, if and when it warrants, that will be done.
Staff highlighted this in the report, but the Public Works, Street Department, Nebraska Department of Transportation, all the people at Offutt and Bellevue School District issued no return statements back to the Planning Department on traffic or this development. Is that correct?
Correct, not on traffic. State Department of Transportation did have some comments pertaining to specific, grading and drainage plans, and specific permits that will be required upon the building permit, but nothing more specific than that.
Thank you.
Question for applicant. What is your timeline for starting construction and then completing construction?
Sure. I guess that would be a little contingent upon how this process moves forward. But our typical construction period, varies from 12 to 16 months for a project this size, and that would be, obviously dependent on how we set up that construction and where we staged. As we were kind of talking about earlier, do we, phase out portions of that and go? That would take a little bit longer than a typical project where we would, kind of full force, into, a singular building, for instance. So, and then we'd love to be breaking ground, this summer sometime would be our ideal place, but we've got some hurdles to get there and to get to permitting. So,
And if for whatever reason, way, shape, or form that this project needed to be delayed down the road, how much flexibility do you have? For example, if you were going to wait until that access road was built, would you still be interested 2 years from now coming in and doing this?
So I think the short answer, unfortunately, is no. The tax credits that we receive do have a time frame that's associated with them, and that's an IRS regulation, not the state agency or us or the investors. It's a federal mandate of 2 years. So we've got to be placed in service by the year end of 12/31. 2021. So, we've got plenty of time now, but if this pushes down, then, we would have to go back to the state and talk to them about, refreshing those credits or swapping those credits or something to that effect. Not saying it can't be done, but I know it would definitely not be their preferred route and certainly not ours either. I mean, we are, we're in the business of getting units to those affordable and workforce residents as quickly as we can. And so, because there's a huge need, as mentioned, for this type of housing in this area and really nationwide, but this area too. So again, not saying it can't be done, but certainly not the preferred route.
And then a final question for you is, will there be a apartment manager on site?
Yes, there is one management unit, and typically it's actually not the manager. It's usually a maintenance technician, which we kind of like better in case there is some sort of emergency or something that breaks down. But it would be either a manager or a maintenance tech, someone who works for the management company will be on site. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to make some comments. So I do commend you, Mr. Snow, and your company for the changes that you've made. And I know one of the comments was about someone from out of state coming in and making choices. How much research did you have to do to find this particular property for this kind of a project?
Well, it's, we've been working on this particular project for coming on 3 years now. We started doing market research, kind of on that deal. We like to be in areas like this. As mentioned before, we've got an Air Force base, which a lot of those residents qualify for the housing that we have. We're 10, 15 miles from, a larger city in Omaha. I mean, it really is a kind of a great location for that. This particular site was a use by right, for apartments. And now we're, obviously coming in and tweaking that, but, we're tweaking it, at least from our, point of view, for the better. In that sense. So, I mean, a lot of research goes into where and how and why we pick, particular sites. A lot of it, again, based in market analysis. Someone mentioned the flood a little bit earlier, and this is one of the things, that flood that did kind of put our application package to the state, kind of in preference, was because of Sarpy County's impact on that flood. Again, we had submitted this particular application maybe 2 times prior to us finally getting awarded, and that flood did have a major impact on us getting a little bit more preference than some other counties in the state, just because of that flood.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that some of the residents might be military personnel, because some of our base housing on base properties, that procedure in the military has changed immensely. So I'm hearing, I think, from some of the residents that they're concerned about lower rent housing. But I think because people don't have enough money to rent bigger and better houses doesn't mean they're bad people. But I find it ironic that the state will give you tax credits, and yet the state will ignore the fact that they're not following some standard. The one I hear is from the Fire Protection Code. And allowing residents in that area, this is not, please, Mr. Snow, don't say it's to you, but I find it ironic that the state is ignoring the residents of that area by not helping them find another access point to their properties. Mr. Casey asked you a question about the manager being on site. Now, since you're selecting the NP Dodge Company as the managing director, I don't know what else to call it, I assume that someone from their office, other than the maintenance person or just the manager, will check the property frequently?
Oh, yes. They'll have a regional, a manager that oversees. They obviously have multiple offices, in the surrounding area. So yes, there would be. These housing tax credit projects are extremely management heavy. There's a lot of compliance, a lot of paperwork, a lot of files, and they're reviewed at a very large level and quarterly and things of that nature. So, and not only is it the management company, but we've got an investor who's buying these tax credits that is, also have a very vested interest for 15 years. So they're out annually, checking on it. So it's not just the state, and it's not just us as the owner. It's not just the management company, but it's also the investor. And so we have this, high level of regulation and oversight, that it's outside of just the owner's control, which I think is a little bit hard for some people to understand, but it is, it's part of this program.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to make another comment, and I'm really bothered by the one access in and out for the residents of that area. It seems to me that Sarpy County is just kind of bypassing all of the residents of that area. The Nebraska Department of Transportation obviously doesn't feel that these people are that important. I would look at elected representatives in both of those areas, if I were living in that area, to consider who best to contact and who best to vote for in upcoming elections. It seems to me, and again, personal opinion, I think the city of Bellevue is working on your behalf, and they're trying to get another access for you. It seems on Highway 34. And I'm just going by what I'm hearing here tonight and by the reports that we've had. Thank you, Mr. Snow.
If I could, just as a point of clarification, I have talked to attorneys for the state, and Mr. Hazy touched on this earlier. Their legal opinion is that there are 2 access points to the subdivision. One's an emergency access, but that there are 2 access points. I only point that out because I've had that conversation. I'm not saying, we have to agree with that, but that is the legal opinion coming from the state.
There you go.
One additional comment, if I might. I appreciate the comments on the single paved access without the restriction of the chain and what that can do. But you're building into this. If the applicant was completed construction 3 or 4 years ago, we would have a 3-story building with 118 units and a single access point, according to some people, and the legal opinion of perhaps 2. This is not the only area inside the county that faces this. Quail Creek at one time only had 1 access. Falcon Forest at one time, if I recall, only had 1 access. The Bel Air subdivision under construction in the 60s only had 1 access point. Fontenelle Forest, I believe, has 1 access point, maybe 2 by now as well. And so it's not unusual to see some sort of emergency access point The Quill Creek one's probably the best example. The second access point is a chain across the road, and that was until Falcon Forest was built. I totally sympathize, and I've lived in most of those areas in my life, including Fountaindale Forest, where there's been one access and a steep hill, and there were heavy snows, and so I'm totally appreciative of the emergency situation as well. But regardless of how current regulations are and codes are, there are other residential areas not too far from here that are in the same area. In fact, point of fact is that if you go down to American Heroes Park on the north side, there's really only one entrance in there. And so even in a park, we have one. So we've had none of the agencies, which troubles me more, acknowledge that. And here we are. And so I'm troubled as well. But there are other examples as well as this, where we're actually trying to change zoning, which is our specific question tonight, from RG 28 to 28 PS.
The public hearing is closed. I would not be able to unless we had a motion to reopen the public hearing at this time.
If I could, I'd like to make a motion to continue to hear the comment.
All right, motion. Second. And motion by Jacobson, second by Cutsford to reopen. I will reopen the public hearing. You want to state your name again for the record?
Matt Ramsey. Thank you. I appreciate that. You are right. If they built before 2012, it would not be an issue because this was a new requirement that was included in the 2012 fire code as adopted by Bellevue. And so anything prior to that, that second entrance egress point would not be required. But with the modern fire code as adopted, it is. Thank you.
I have one follow-up question to ask. Jared Biltoff, 14918 Bordeaux Avenue. If you look at our community, he wants to add, what, 65, 75 units? Working class, low income housing units, got families. Where are the kids supposed to go? They're gonna shuffle down in our housing area, shuffle down in our neighborhood. There's no convenient mart. There's one small park for them. Are they gonna build a nice little bike path all the way down the patio? That'd be nice, but there's nowhere for the kids to go. They're gonna walk on that one access road to go to the local come and go. That's probably about 2.5, 3 miles away. There's nowhere for them to go. You're just asking for trouble. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
I said a couple things that I should have said before. One, Dennis Ryan, Normandy Hills. You guys and Sarpy County both signed off on the fire code. The state did not. They don't recognize it. And we've been in negotiation with them ever since they started the reconstruction. And it states in that fire code that any subdivision that has more than 30 homes has to have two exits, two entrance and two exits. So you got an ingress and egress. So you got one on the north end, but on the south end we have nothing. And as far as that gate there, it says on there only emergency vehicles can use that exit. So that means that we can't. And I know, Mr. Ritz, you had mentioned when we first talked, you were over here, and you said you had feelings about it not being safe with the one entrance. And that does cause us a lot of concern because even while the road was under construction, we still had problems with the fire rescue coming in. The other thing is that, watch me forget, and all the other places that the state has offered are down to that back gravel road back there by the farmer. And that's all loam ground, which is loose. And you said you don't want to put an access road there. If you did, it's just going to exit back out onto Fairview. You're going to have a bigger, cluster of cars there. The whole thing behind this that we like is it'll be nice, but there's more traffic. You're going to have, you figure at least 2 cars for every home. And you've got between Cedar View and the duplexes and Normandy Hills, you've probably got about 700-800 cars that travel in and out. You've got military personnel who are being traveled in and out, being transferred. So you got big moving trucks. The hill, where the way they've got Grenoble right now, is when you try to make that turn, we've got video and everything from the winters past. That's a very hard hill to make. It's a real steep incline. I don't know if any of you had a chance to go out there, but if you go out, drive through, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just real steep, and it's a sharp 90-degree turn. It doesn't have an ease to it. So that's two things, because we've had a lot of cars. We had like 8 cars this last winter that were stuck at the bottom, and people had to abandon their cars and walk home and then try and get up the next day. And also, I talked with Don Kelly from the county. He's the head commissioner there. And I told him that, about this, and because when it was brought up at the council meeting about all the SIDs that are being annexed, we asked who's going to maintain our property. They said, oh, we'll probably have the county do that for you. Mr. Kelly's words were absolutely not. He says, once you're annexed, he says, you belong to Bellevue. And I feel right now that Bellevue doesn't have enough equipment or manpower to handle all of that. So that's another thing you guys might consider. Plus your police preference, your maintenance companies and that.
For time.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. But anyway, you got a little better idea of that now. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing again. Before, I'd like to make, a few comments, since you did remind me of my comments on the last meeting that this came up with. I am definitely concerned that there is only one access point. And from my point of view, I've not lived in Bellevue I moved into Bellevue in 2013. This problem of yours, I was told, was from early 2000s. You've been dealing with it. From my point of view, bringing it forward to this commission, bringing it forward at the annexation votes, you guys have had some good traction forward, because now you're working with Bellevue rather than the state and Sarpy County, who it seems are fine with what they are legally defining as a second access point. Once the annexations are resolved, you're going to have a city councilman who will have an entire subdivisions of people with one issue on their mind. And that's a lot of power you guys are going to have with that person once that annexation goes through and you get representation. I am going to take a step back, though, and say that blinders on, we have to focus on what is the question at hand tonight for this commission. And I'd like to discuss, the fire code and everything else that's been brought up, because every single thing that's been said has been a good, reasonable thing to discuss, not just with this development, but with the entire community there. That said, the question boils down to really simply changing it from the existing code, which allows a single building to be built for the exact purposes that they want to use it for, versus a overlay that allows them to just change the design of that building. That is the question that we are charged with answering tonight. If we were to deny that, it would not stop any development there. It would just change the shape of it. They are in compliance with all of the rules when they go to get the permits for this building, because that is not even done yet. They will have to be in compliance with all the codes that Bellevue has adopted, and they will have to listen to all of those things. So I guess I want to kind of just bring us back in line and kind of focus on that one question, which is the question that we are charged with here. We're all volunteers. We are not elected. We're trying to do the best job we can for the city of Bellevue, and that means focusing on the questions that are brought to us. And so just that's my 2 cents for it. And I'm going to turn it back over to the commissioners for any additional questions that you guys have. If anyone wants to have any more conversation on the matter, to ask any more.
I do have a question for Mr. Ryan. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to make you come back up again.
It's all right. I gotta get my exercise somehow.
You mentioned earlier that you recently filed an appeal. Could you clarify what you're referring to?
We filed an appeal with the state for being in violation of not having a second entrance, and we filed that with Mr. Jungers, is our attorney, and that's about all I can tell you that I know right now. He did indicate that somebody from either your offices or county office, that the state said that they want to try and maybe get together with the three of us and see if we can't work something out. What that means, I don't know.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone additional questions, comments? If not, is there a motion that anyone would like to make?
Well, seeing no other questions or comments to move things forward, I would like to make a motion to approve the request to rezone Lot 2, Twin Valley Church replat addition from RG 28 to RG 28 PS for the purpose of multifamily residential development with site plan approval, and also noted that they have met the criteria of 5.1703 of the RG 28 PS requirements, that the Planning Commission shall find the proposed modification as to plotting lots for the public interest in harmony with the purpose of this ordinance will not adversely affect nearby properties, or the configuration, topology, vegetation of such normal arrangements would not be appropriate. The native state of the parcel can best approved by application of the PS classification. The owner will utilize new and innovative planning methods to develop a subdivision of sound character, which is what I believe we have here, or the request for PS plan subdivision classification is not solely for the purpose of convenient profit or caprice. The redesign was a significant investment, so I find that we have at least met one of those in my proposal to approve. And let me find my note. Request approval based on substantial conformance to the zoning and our future planning act, as well as minimal impact to the area.
We have a motion by Mr. Jacobson. Second by Arnie.
All voted yes, motion carried.
This item will go for public hearing on February 4th to City Council. Once again, I urge you guys to show up to public hearing, keep this issue on the plate for them.